More about the industry, because you say they are hell-bent on creating a pool of permanent addicts in the same way that the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry have done that over many, many years. And you're actually saying this is a public health issue now.
Absolutely. Well, let me give you an example of the addict part. Is that in Adult Video News, they ran an article a few years ago called The Distracted Consumer, and they were very happy because they said they reckon that 1 in 5 men who go to internet pornography is an addict, and this, of course, was good news for the industry. And what the article then went on to do was to talk about how you can create software that keeps the addict more addicted on the website. So they were looking at ways to enhance and increase the addiction. And it's like any other industry.
You heard it from her. It's like any other industry. Therefore, they make a product that people buy. They use the money to make other products that people will buy, so on and so forth. If you have a big problem with that, I suggest you go off into the woods and eat nothing but mung beans and rice for the rest of your life. Commercialism at its best.
You know, pornography is an industry. The tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, they want addicts because they're the major consumers of the product. Now, also, what you're seeing increasingly as younger and younger boys are getting into this, it's getting encoded into their sexual DNA, and they're looking for more and more pornography.
Look, if you don't want little kids to look at pornography, all you need to do is put on a very good filter and help bring it into the correct context if they do look at pornography.
So this is the serious problem about what's going on. And, you know, I never really used to believe in addiction. I used to think it was men's way to not take responsibility. But if you listen to psychologists, if you read what Adult Video News is saying, and if I can't tell you how many emails I get each day from men who tell me just how addicted to pornography they really are.
I find that highly laughable that a man would come to you about their addiction to pornography.
Let's talk about this issue of young boys, because you make this shocking and I would argue highly contestable statement. You say we're raising a generation of boys who are cruel, bored and desensitised. I mean, aren't you sort of exaggerating this effect? I mean, to start with, it's impossible really to know how many boys we're talking about, isn't it? I mean, you're given this figure of an average of age 11, but no one really knows whether that's true or not.
My point exactly, she is probably making this all up. I don't know why. Maybe she's anti-sex. Maybe she thinks that we all need to be in Victorian London and basically have no sex only for procreation.
Well, there are studies, studies done across the West to say that, you know, sometimes between 65 and 85% of boys by the age of 13 have viewed pornography more than once.
And that's a truly bad thing because I don't see a problem with people looking at pornography as long as it's in the right context.
Now, the thing is, we know that images impact on the way we think about the world. If that was not the case, we would not have a multi-billion-dollar a year advertising industry. By virtue of the fact we have advertising, we know that these images affect the way you think about the world, affect your consumer choices, affect who you are in the world.
Yes, and that's a truly bad thing because...
Now, if advertising can do that, why can't pornography? And these images are very powerful. Remember, they send messages to men's brains via the penis.
Yeah, again, she's assuming that all men are drooling perverts and idiots who only want to have sex with women because they're idiots and perverts. No, I think more highly of people than that. I think they should be able to make free choices. I will support them as much as I can, even if the choices don't agree with me.
Which is an incredibly powerful delivery system, and it's very hard to walk away from those images. So what concerns me as somebody who has studied media images for over 20 years is what does it mean for a young 11-year-old boy who's got really no history of sex to compare those images to? What does it mean that...
Like I said previously, if you don't want your kids to see it, all you need to do is install a good strong filter, or what I would prefer you to do is help bring it into the correct context. Help build them into a big strong adult who can deal with sex on an adult basis, which I would like for you to do.
This is his first introduction to pornography. And what does it mean that it is accessible 24 hours a day? So what I'm saying is this is a social experiment. We have never before brought up a generation of boys on hardcore pornography. And I can tell you that the studies are showing, and the anecdotal...
Let me guess, you pulled those studies right out of your ass.
evidence from psychologists are showing that this is not good news. It's not good news for the boys because their sexuality is being hijacked, and it's certainly not good news for the women and the girls that they're going to date because they're insisting that these girls and women perform porn sex. And my interviews with young women tell me that they feel completely backed into a corner by these men and boys.
And if they don't like it, they shouldn't be dating them then. Because I'm sorry, you're not a moral guardian and you can't dictate what girls or boys can do when you're not around.
Even if you're right about the age at which boys are accessing pornography perhaps once or twice before the age of 13, I think you just said there, it isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? Because there are a new generation of parents by the same token who one would hope are actually teaching their boys to treat girls with respect.
Congratulations! Give that guy a medal! I would shake his hand if he was in front of me right now.
And vice versa, teaching their girls that they shouldn't take disrespect from boys.
Yeah, again, I would shake your hand if you were right here in front of me.
Well, one would hope so, but I have to tell you, and I lecture to parents groups all across the country, is most parents I meet do not know what their kids are accessing.
Well, you could install filters that help limit and restrict websites that you don't approve of. You could go through their web history. You could stand behind them all the time, making sure that they don't look at porn or look at something that you don't approve of. Or you could just simply talk to your kids and help bring it into a correct context for them.
They do not know what pornography is because they're older. They were not brought up with this kind of image-based internet culture, and they are shocked to see what pornography is. And
that statement is full of crap because primarily what she is saying is that nobody else knows about pornography other than little kids, which admittedly adults can look at pornography, men can look at pornography, women can look at pornography, heck, even I can look at pornography if I want to. That statement is crap.
I can't tell you again how many emails I get from parents who accidentally stumbled across their teenagers' internet sites, and what they found was hardcore pornography. So I don't think parents are equipped. And you know what's really important here? Parents are not the only people who bring up a child. A culture brings up a child.
Look, a parent should act as a moral guardian, help bring everything into a correct context, should help bring up a good, strong adult. What you seem to think is the government should take care of everything. If you don't like it, a government should do something about it. If you don't like it, here's a clue. Don't watch it.
And our culture is now toxic. And thanks to the pornographers, what parents have to do is try and keep the culture outside of the house. But this is counterintuitive to parenting. And I think that the culture is making it harder to be a parent. And I don't blame parents for this. I think they're overwhelmed by it.
Personally, I don't think the culture is toxic. I think the culture is alive, well, and breathing. You just want it to be like this mid-sanitized 1950s style of living, which never existed, never have, and never fucking will. And there's nothing you can do to make it like that.
What about the young women? And you say this yourself. Some of them come to you and argue they support porn because they see it as a form of female empowerment.
I know, this is the most interesting argument, and often the pornography they're talking about, well, mostly is not the gonzo pornography.
This part completely undermines her own argument, because gonzo or snuff only makes up a very small proportion of pornography. The rest of it is just man, women, and occasionally another woman engaging in nice, healthy, consenting sex. If there is nothing wrong with that in my opinion.
Because women tend to look at a different type of pornography. But this is what
type of... Let me interrupt you there. What type of pornography do women look at typically?
Generally, what's called feature pornography, which is kind of not as body punishing. It's got some attempt at a storyline, some attempt at mimicking a Hollywood movie. Also, there's some pornography made by some women pornographers, which is kind of a bit softer, not as hardcore, not as brutal, not as in your face. The studies...
See, there is pornography for men, there's pornography for women, there's pornography for homosexuals, there's pornography for lesbians if they're out there. See, and I don't see a single problem with that.
Show, according to the porn industry, that gonzo is reserved mainly for the men. So what these women tell me about how it's empowering is, I think, speaks to the success of the porn industry in hijacking the debate, the discussion about sexuality. They have argued that to be hot, to be cool, to be part of our sexual revolution, you need to embrace pornography. And what I would argue, and what feminists argue, is that pornography is a particular type of representation of sex. It is based on the debasement of women, and what we need to do as women and as feminists is to redefine sexuality in ways that encode it into being more just and more equal and more fair.
You're saying fair and equal when in actuality in the porn industry, women get paid significantly more than the men. Which for that would happen, women would have to get a significant pay cut, which you probably would throw a huge bitch fit over.
And I think to embrace pornography, as many women are doing, is to basically capitulate to the porn industry.
Trust me, if the porn industry was as bad as she makes it out to be, nobody would be working in it, or they would only be working in it for 1 or 2 films. But they don't. They make sure they're clean, they make sure they're healthy, they make sure they get paid a good enough amount.
We haven't got a lot of time left. Let me go to what governments can do. In Australia, we've got a government who wants to impose a filter on the internet that acts as a kind of national censor, blocking sites with material which would be banned, for example, from our movie screens. Now, do you support government interventions like this?
First of all, that government filter is a load of horse shit. Many people have come out against it, both in and out of governments. And 2, there are a couple other countries that I can think of which have filters not similar to like that. Like, let's say, for instance, China and North Korea. You know, those big West End communist governments which try to control every single thing that their people do. Which I think the irony is lost on her. And I've heard that in the UK they'll be having something like that, which yet again people have come out against it, saying that it will be useless, it won't have the intended effect, all it would really do is just kill the internet as a whole.
Well, let me tell you what I do support. I think on some level we have to think of the pornography industry as an industry. And all over the West we have come to a decision that industries need to be somewhat regulated by the government, because if not, the industries will absolutely, exploit consumers. So I think there is a place absolutely for the governments to get involved.